Well, I'm very happy to be here with my good friend Leif Pagrotsky, who comes to us from Sweden via some American relatives nearby, and who I've known for a number of years. And going back to a time when I had the good fortune to come to Stockholm more often than I have lately, almost every year for a while. Sure. Leif, as you've read, was involved with, still as an MP in Sweden, and is involved with the Swedish Bank, second person in charge there, and spent 10 years in the cabinet in Sweden in a number of roles, including Minister of Industry and of Trade and of Culture. So he's had a long time to look at not only how does Sweden work, but how does Europe work. And so I think we have a great chance for some insight here for those of us who are not necessarily global travelers or who don't have the time to think about Europe. Europe is in an interesting situation because it seems resurgent in a lot of ways, even though it's going through struggles politically and so on. Economically, there are some pretty interesting stories going on in Europe. I picked a subject kind of a little bit arbitrarily, but we might as well start there. There are people who used to talk about the new Europe a decade ago. They're starting to talk about it again for whatever reason. Is there really, in your mind, a new Europe economically?
Yes, thank you first of all for inviting me. I'm
very glad to have you here.
Personal note, and also I'm glad that you're interested in Europe. For a long time it feels that many people have considered Europe to be irrelevant, and it has dropped out of the agenda, out of the map, outside the frame. So I'm happy twice, so to speak. Well, I do think there is a new Europe in one important sense only, but it is very important that the Iron Curtain is gone since a long time now, and that the new market economies, the new democracies, turn out to be such vibrant contributions to economic life all over Europe. They're younger, they're more entrepreneurial, they're more prone to take risks, and I think it has injected dynamism into Europe in many ways. And to live in the middle of this is a great time.
Mm-hmm. So, let's just put some wrapper around this little perspective and context. We've seen Europe go through the Maastricht Treaty, the EMU, the Monetary Union, all of the Maastricht rules being broken or not broken on a daily basis. I have tended to see this, at least my bias seems to have been that this is kind of a Franco-German project. Everybody else gets to come along at their own peril or cost. And the two-tiered voting system that everybody's arguing about now is probably part of that difficulty. The new guys you're talking about coming into Europe are facing this two-tiered voting. You know, you come in at what cost, and then how long do you have to wait until you're a full member, and what are the benefits, and then do you get the same vote as the big kids get, and so forth?
I think these things are part of the explanation why Europe is dropping out of the agenda, because these things are so complicated, so difficult to comprehend, and so many Europeans are obsessed by these technicalities that you lose sight of what's important and what's not. Europe is gradually integrating. We have been integrating now these 10 former Soviet bloc economies, and that's a fabulous achievement. But the monetary union, the political discussions about the new constitution, should we have an elected commission president, should we change the division of labor between the parliament and the commission and so on, forget it, it's not that important. Europe is working better and better, but in some respects terribly bad still. And these things are just a distraction that politicians love to do. But my advice to you is don't spend too much time trying to learn all these technicalities.
Right. It seemed as though there were an on-the-street reaction of this type in France and maybe in other countries.
Yes.
There's just too much stuff, right? Too many layers of bureaucracy.
And it's too much of the elites discussing things that normal people don't understand. I'm a professional negotiator in the European Union context. It's too complex for me. And to ask of the voter in the street to understand this and to become mobilized, it's asking too much. It's already a lot to ask in a democracy normal voters to have ideas about national things like energy policy, global warming, tax policy, all kinds of complicated things. And on top of it, they're asked to have a say in the constitution of the European Union.
Right.
And I think that is not the most important. The constitution may fail, it may succeed. It will mean a lot to politicians, it means a lot for the speed with which progress can be made. But if it fails, it will continue and muddle through the way it has, and it will continue to be a fairly good progress.
Right. Is it? I think maybe is it fair to describe there are two basic camps of thought on this question. One is that actual failure would be a good thing, kind of a minimalist approach to government, to the pan-European government. Let everybody have basic regional or state controls of some kind or other, and leave whatever is there today as the over-control, the uber-control, versus the other camp which thinks that it's really going to be a true federation of states. We're going to have a true government of all taxation, everything else is going to be done.
I think it's this way. Europe is divided between two camps. One is the camp that wants an ever closer union leading to a United States of Europe, inspired by the United States of America.
Right.
And that is like the French who started this. I thought it would be a united Europe under French leadership. Many of my French friends dream about this. And you're laughing.
You're laughing, but it's true.
That's the way it is.
It's historically true.
and that's why they wanted a monetary union as a prize for allowing Germany to reunite. That was Mitterrand's prize for supporting the reunification.
Well, we can add the part of the German deal was they thought they were going to get the bank and the currency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other camp is like the British and the one I belong to. We don't need a federal Europe. The distance between voters in the national democracy and its own government, that distance is huge enough as it is. And to widen that distance, to elect a European president and remove tax policy decisions to Brussels and so on, that is not the way to go. And the Constitution mirrors this in a way, but not entirely. The Constitution is a compromise between these two groups because it says not only what the European Union should do, it also says what it should not do, and leaves and clarifies that. And it also clarifies decision-making procedures in a new larger union of 27 members, so that we don't have to meet in a football stadium when we take decisions, that we can have fairly small groups. And I'm a bit relaxed about it. I think it will not be an extremely big deal whether it fails or not.
Mm-hmm. So just to put away this Constitution question one more time, we're coming up to another moment of decision.
Yes, in June.
We just went through experience with the old leaders who met over dinner from France and Germany and made up their minds what would be best for the children, right?
Yeah.
And told the children, and the children were very unhappy about what the result was.
The farmers.
And so they rejected the Constitution, that version of it. And we're coming right back up to this again now. So if it's rejected again, your point of view is that's not a bad thing. It's probably okay.
It will be postponed in that case for another few years. What they do now is they try to strip out the symbolic things that and the word constitution. They take away a thing like a national anthem for Europe and a number of other symbols that I don't find very important. And then they take away the word constitution. And so Sarkozy can say in the campaign, if it's not the constitution, we don't need a referendum. Mm-hmm. This is not the constitution. This is not just a change in the basic regulations of how the union works. I don't understand the difference, but to him, it means that he has now a mandate to go through with it without a new referendum because he has replaced the name constitution with another word. And he was elected on that promise, and that means that the French don't need a new referendum. If we can agree or not, we don't know. There are plenty of difficulties, like if some people are to vote more, some people have to vote less because they're just 100% of the votes to share. And France wants to decide more. Poland don't want to give up anything. Poland is a very big country. And we'll see.
Yeah. It has seemed for a long time to me as though there's a basic split which we discussed briefly last night, but the English, I'd like to throw Iceland in there if I could, Denmark and Sweden,
Yeah.
all voting the same way against monetary union.
Yes.
So you have almost an ancient cut across Europe.
That's true.
Back to 800 or
It's a very
something.
clear north-south divide in
Yeah.
European cooperation. Almost everywhere you look, you see the difference. In trade policy, for instance, in attitude towards the market. I, as a Nordic social democrat, as a Swedish politician of the left, I have very little in common with my colleagues from my own party in Italy or France compared to conservatives from the UK. So national identities mean in trade policy, for instance, much more than party affiliation. Sarkozy is now elected on a protectionist agenda, and he has made his first statements that he's going to kill the Doha round, more or less, that we are there to protect the farmers, not to sell them out to the Americans or whatever he's threatening with. So I'm very concerned about the way Europe is moving with Sarkozy. I think the French vote, not only because I'm a politician of the left and it was a victory for the right, but I think the way Sarkozy won the election is bad for basic values that I share, like free trade, like an open union and tolerant union.
Well, he was fairly crafty, I think, or smart in terms of his campaign. He was moving around quite a bit.
Yes.
And wiping out various other folks as he went. So
Absolutely.
Monsieur Le Pen got the dagger at the very end.
But Turkey is paying the price for Sarkozy's desire to attract Le Pen's voters.
Yeah.
Le Pen is the intolerant, you would call him racist, the anti-Muslim candidate. And Sarkozy won his voters by not saying what he said about Muslims in France, but saying, we don't need Muslims in the European Union, so let's keep Turkey out. And that means that Turkey, instead of moving towards modernization and moving towards closer relations with the European Union, may choose to be a regional superpower in the Muslim world, with Caucasus, Syria, Iran, their own other neighbors as their main orientation. I believe it would have been more in our interest, in the interest of stability, peace and democracy, if Turkey, as the regional superpower that it actually is, if Turkey was attracted more towards Europe, more towards the West. Sarkozy closed that door and locked it and bolted it.
Yeah.
And I think that is very unfortunate.
Yeah. This in my mind, harks back to the riots in is it Denmark?
Yes.
After Theo was assassinated. And particularly after those cartoons were published in the newspapers around the world, and there were Muslim riots worldwide, actually.
Yes.
And it struck me at that time, and I think I wrote this someplace in SNS. It was the end of Turkey's chance, and the reason in my mind was when you saw the television pictures
Yes.
of thousands or tens of thousands of angry young men screaming their heads off because there was a cartoon published in a newspaper. And you ask yourself, do you want this to be your capital city?
Yeah.
And the answer across Western Europe would be no.
I think you spotted this before I did. It's maybe that was there it was born, what happened now in France.
Yeah.
And but Turkey was never part of this.
No.
Turkey is a secular state, and the role of the...
No, it's not about Turkey, really.
Yeah, so Turkey, in this case, it could be an argument to say, let's strengthen the secular Muslim state that we have in the region. Let's strengthen them and do things that would support their development
Yes.
in the direction we like.
Yeah.
But instead, I mean, people don't understand the difference between Iran and Turkey. They say it's all Muslim and that's it.
But I think we're now agreeing that that's probably not going to happen. Turkey probably won't be coming in.
Well, France, I mean, it requires unanimity. Everybody has the right to veto. Most countries are reluctant to use the veto, but the French have the tradition of
Yeah.
storming the Bastille to
They
make
actually
revolution is a
prefer,
good
I
thing,
think.
and to fight a battle for something is a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
It's something that most other EU members don't do very often.
Yeah.
But in France, you can run a campaign by saying, I will use the veto here, I will use it there, I will use it everywhere.
Yeah.
And we all know who has negotiated in Brussels, they do use it very often.
Yeah.
And they don't hesitate.
Right.
So it's their privilege, they think, and the rest of us put up with it. And I'm surprised sometimes at how tolerant the rest of Europe is. And well, I like France. I mean, this conversation is moving perhaps in a strange direction, but I like France very much. But in the European Union, they are sometimes very aggressive, very nationalistic, very egoistic, and maybe it's our fault. We should be the same. But in that case, there would not be very much of a European Union.
So if we look at the other power player, which is Germany, Angela Merkel, how do you see her, and how do you see Germany is now the largest exporter in the world, I think.
Yes, I think so.
So, which is a bit surprising. You see all the barriers, you see the costs, the various trade unions, the requirements in terms of legalities for management, and you think, well, this is a pretty expensive way to make an export, and they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Germany is a country that shouldn't be that successful according to the normal economics textbooks. I mean, the rigidity is inflexible, but it shows that the science of economics, of understanding a modern economy, has not advanced as far as genomics. And this animal should not be able to fly the way it does. It is very successful in the international markets. We're talking about the industry.
Yeah.
As a manufacturing country, they're extremely successful.
Yeah.
Quality counts, engineering is fantastic, and they're very good at it.
Now we've just been through the Siemens debacle, so we've got a whole bunch of guys going to jail now, or coming up on charges for bribery, international bribery. And I suppose we should mention that this is the leading engineering manufacturing company in Germany.
And I hope it will mean that more scandals will be revealed in other places, because nobody I know believes that this is the only one that happened.
Right.
But what we have seen here is so scandalous, and what we have seen in Volkswagen and some other countries and other companies are also terrible. And I think this needs to be cleaned up, and we need to rebuild the confidence of our big corporations all over the world and all over Europe. You had Enron, and a lot of things
Boeing
followed it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Boeing, of course. And I hope Siemens can play the same role for us. We didn't have one single scandal like that yet in my country, and I have no doubt that we have had similar things that has happened, but they've not been discovered.
Yeah.
I hope not as bad as Siemens, though.
Right.
Or Volkswagen.
Right. So we'd like to think that this is based on merit, not based on bribes, and this is going to go forward as it has gone already. And maybe there's a German export driver there for the entire...
But the paradox is they should not have needed this. They are the strongest exporters on the planet. They don't need bribes to sell. And if they are selling that much, the bribes, if they contribute 1% extra, I mean, that's I can't believe that they're using this considering where they are.
Why take the risk?
Yeah.
Okay, well...
You also asked about Angela Merkel. I think she's been a very positive surprise. And she has shown leadership that nobody expected.
That's right.
Not least in her own party.
Yeah.
You know, it was a coup by Gerhard Schröder to call a snap election so fast that the CDU had no time to replace Angela Merkel. That was his calculation. His calculation was that she was the easiest opponent for him to defeat. And she has surprised everybody by rising to the task in a way that few others expected.
Yes.
And not least on the international arena. And I think I do not come from the same party as she does, but I think I have to commend her for that.
Grudging respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, she did that thing with the 20, right? With the environmental agreement, and that seemed impossible to pull off. And it was a couple months ago, and suddenly at the end of the 3 days, she shows up and they all sign up, and she's done it. Also
in the first budget, where they brokered, where she did negotiate as a leader of one country playing against all the others. She played as a leader of the union that put herself above national interests more than her predecessor did and more than others did. And so she brokered extremely difficult deals by as being the strongest member. She paid more than the others.
Right.
And I think that's statesmanship, and it paid off.
So if we're going to look, say, 5 years forward here and describe the Europe we see, let me lay out some ideas and see if you agree with what we see. Germany remains strong in exports, probably remains the primary driver in terms of GDP.
Agree.
We've got Sweden continues strong. You've had a very nice, 6 or 8 years of surprising and stable economic growth.
Yeah, fantastic
really,
surprise
I mean,
for all of us, yes.
Hats off to you, because you guys,
Thank
I remember my dad was saying about 10 years ago, oh, those Swedes, that's exactly what I mean with what's wrong with the world, right? And of course, he's a right-wing guy, and so you've kind of proved the other case. And so I think that goes on for a while at least. It seems as though there are no huge
The Nordic
changes.
area in general, not only Sweden, I think the Nordic area in general
Will prosper.
has I'm very optimistic about that part of Europe. I think our model of society with broad-based high-level education will be winners in a time of globalization where knowledge will mean more than at any time in history. Flexibility, adaptability will mean more. And high level of education of the entire labor force, not only of the Nobel laureates, but of the normal labor force, that will be winners in the coming years.
Yeah.
And the Nordic region will be well placed,
Yes.
I believe.
Gordon Brown's going to run England for a while. We don't know for how long.
Yeah, but
He's a
no
pretty
matter,
smart guy.
it's hard to win this election for him.
Yeah.
It will be very tough.
Yeah.
The Brits are tired. They are like we felt after 12 years in office in September.
Yes, what, three
people
years?
People get tired. They want new faces.
Yeah.
And they get a new face, but it's a very familiar face. And who knows? I hope he will win. He's a very, very impressive figure, and what he's done in Britain is fantastic.
Yes.
But the psychology of an election is also extremely important.
Right. And he has 3 years, I think, out of that term remaining. Is that right? 3 years left?
2 or 3, I don't remember.
Yeah. And then we go to Spain, and that's kind of a funny story, because Spain was doing really well.
Yeah.
Spain has been the Ireland of the last, right?
Very impressive.
But with the change in government, not so well, it seems to me. Seems like they're stumbling now.
Yes, and they also will have problems of
The ETA
inflation
and
and other things. It's a riskier, but they're also a surprising dynamic entrepreneurial sector. And the catch-up is more than a catch-up. They have, just like Ireland, they have achieved changes in the mentality and the way the economy works. That is very.
So when you look
positive.
5 years forward from the Spanish point of view, you think, what do you see?
I think they will have a rough ride in some respects, but they will continue to grow the fundamentals in terms of basic instincts, education, opening up to competition more and more. I think that will pay off.
Okay.
I'm optimistic.
Now when I jump down to Italy, I've never understood this part.
I don't understand how they survived this far, but I was wrong so far, so I may be wrong again. I thought they hit the wall many times, but they managed through. This is a case where the monetary union turned out to be the exact opposite of what people predicted. People said, because of the monetary union, they will share a currency with Germany and France and the others. That means that they will have discipline. Instead, it turned out to be the other way around. They will be free riders on the German discipline and the German credibility. And they have been able to continue to run the country in ways that with a normal currency would have led to devaluations, high interest rates, and all kinds of financial problems. Instead, they can just float along. And everybody says the longer they wait, the tougher it will be. But we have waited and waited, and things continue. So I prefer not to bet on it. But Italy is, of course, the most difficult case, also because Italy is so big.
Yeah, it's been. I've been surprised, and whether it's a tourism economy or something else, I don't quite get. But there's something going on there.
And also politically, it's so unstable. But I think two extremely important things for the future of Europe in the coming, say, 10 years is our relations with Russia and our relations with Turkey. Turkey is something like 80 million people. It's bigger. It will very soon be bigger in population terms than Germany. And Of course, Russia, it goes by itself that our relations with Russia are extremely important to our development. I am basically optimistic on both accounts, although I regret that Turkey will not be a member of the European Union. Well, Russia, there is a continuous change of generations, and the younger people are more open, they're less nationalistic, and I think we will have backlashes, but fundamentally the Russia we will see in the coming years will be better in our eyes than the Russia we have seen in the past. Mm-hmm. And imagine the changes that have taken place over the past 15 years. They are fantastic. And although we can meet backlashes, we'll see extremely severe problems, journalists being murdered, cases are never brought to a close, terrible things going on in Chechnya. We will see more civil wars perhaps. But the starting point should not be forgotten. And I believe that the trend we are seeing is positive. And year on year, we may not see progress, but say decade on decade, we will see big progress. I am very optimistic in the somewhat longer term about Russia, and that will of course pay off also for our neighbors, for Russia's neighbors, the Nordic countries and Europe.
Yeah. Well, very good. We have a minute or two if there are questions for Leif.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Gardner. Leif, I wanted to ask about Germany. One of the things they've done in energy policy is people now are investing in solar because the government is guaranteeing a purchase price for that energy. And can you perhaps talk about if that's going to be extended as a model for the rest of Europe, or that's something we should be looking at here?
Well, I don't know so much about the details of how they did it in Germany, but we did the same in Sweden. I happened to be Minister for Energy at the time. We had this incentive program for green electricity, wind power, solar power, and so on. And the investments didn't come along. So we prolonged the program. We issued a political promise, whatever that is worth, that incentives would be in place for 30 years. And it was like not a price guarantee, but a guarantee of a premium price compared to the market price for 30 years. And in our constitution, that is impossible to do, but we managed to strengthen the credibility of the system, and investments picked up, contributed by this, but also about electricity prices in general that were so high. But I think we have to be creative in this respect. All investments in energy production are extremely long-term, and we have to have in place instruments that reflect this. The best short-term instruments we have is energy conservation, not least, as somebody mentioned, in the transportation of electricity. The grid, there are enormous losses of electricity there, and they pay off very handsomely, very quickly. Not least in the US, you have a lot to do here. But when it comes to production, you need very, very long-term, stable conditions. And political conditions in Europe are not that stable to make such long-term promises very credible, I'm sorry to say.
All right. Thank you, Leif. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.